Hello everyone and welcome. In this lesson, we will learn what pivots are and how they can be modified. So, pivots are basically the points around which an object move or rotate. As you can see, it is represented by this axis tripod, okay? That you can see this one over here at the center, okay? And so when we would like to, for instance, move an object around using the W key or using this icon, which is the move tool, which does the same, or if we want to rotate using the E key, okay, or this next icon, which is the rotate tool, this one next to the move tool, this is the rotate tool. What you will notice is that this axis tripod changes in order to represent the tool we have selected. This is actually called the gizmo. We have a gizmo for the rotate tool and a gizmo for the move tool. And when we start rotating or moving our object around, we are actually doing it around this axis tripod at the center, this one that I have showed you, okay? Pay close attention to the movement of this object when we start rotating or moving this object around. We are actually doing it around this axis tripod, which is the actual pivot point of the object. This is the pivot point of the object, all right? So that's the definition of the pivot point. Now the question is, how can we adjust the position of this pivot point? Because as you can see, with the actual position of our object's pivot point, we are not getting a realistic behavior of the arm, okay? The upper arm instead should rotate from around the shoulder, this spot over here, okay? The same thing goes for the forearm, which should rotate around the elbow location, this spot over here. And the same thing goes for the hand as well, which should rotate around the wrist area. Okay, so the way, let's undo back by pressing the Ctrl Z on our keyboard. So the way we're gonna adjust our pivot point's position is by heading over to the hierarchy tab, this tab over here. Then under the pivot section, we need to select the first option, affect pivot only. Now when we do that, if we have the upper arm, for instance, selected, let's turn this option off and on to see the difference. If we turn this option on, we'll get this new thick axis tripod showing up that we can grab and start either moving around or rotating. But let's focus more on just positioning our pivot to the spot where it should be so that we can get a natural behavior when we start moving the upper arm around. Okay, so let's make sure to place the pivot in the correct spot. So using the move tool or the W key on our keyboard, let's bring this to the side in the x-axis. Let's move it just a bit forward. Let's continue adjusting the position in all axes. Feel free to turn on and off the wireframe mode by pressing the F3 on your keyboard to see exactly where we are placing the pivot of the upper arm object. Okay, this looks beautiful, right? Okay, cool. So once we do so and place the pivot in the correct position, it is now just a matter of clicking again on the Effects Pivot Only button to exit this mode. And now when we grab the Rotate tool and start rotating our upper arm around, all right, take a look. Now we are getting a much more believable type of motion, which is very crucial in cases like these where we want to get a realistic type of articulation. Alright, cool. Let's now do the same for the forearm, okay? Let's select the forearm first, then using the Effects Pivot Only mode, let's make sure to place our pivot at the elbow location, just like so. Let's center this even more, just like that. And once we get it at the correct spot, all we need to do is click again on the Effects Pivot Only to exit the mode. And now if we start rotating the forearm around, okay, take a look. This is looking much more beautiful. Okay, and we are getting a lot better movement of the forearm. Alright, beautiful. Let's now do the same and select the hand this time, and using the Effect Pivot Only mode, let's grab the pivot point and move it to the wrist location and center it. Okay, let's turn around our object to see better the actual placement of our pivot point. Okay, this looks beautiful. So now if we exit the Effect Pivot Only mode and start rotating the hand, all right, take a look. We have managed to correct the movement of the hand, and we are getting much more natural type of motion from the hand. All right, this is looking fantastic. Cool. This is looking awesome. As you can see, we have managed to correct the movement of our arm, forearm, and hand. All right, great. So now if you want to, for instance, to do the reverse and adjust the position of an object, for instance, the hand, without affecting its pivot, you can use this second option, Affect Object Only. And that way, when you use it, if we now select our object and start moving it around, we are not affecting its pivot point. We are just moving the actual object around. And this can be very useful in many cases where you want to only adjust the position of an object without affecting its pivot. And so now if we exit the Effect Object Only, take a look, the pivot remains in the exact same position it was before, and only the object has moved. Okay, this is not looking great, so let's undo back, because I wanna just to show you if you wanna use this technique, because it is very helpful if you want to only adjust the position without affecting the pivot. All right, amazing. So that's pretty much it for this lesson. we have learned about pivot points and how we can adjust them. If you want to learn more about pivot points inside of 3ds Max and see their uses in action, feel free to check out my course, The Beginner's Guide to Rigging in 3ds Max 2018, where we will take advantage of using pivots in the process of setting up the character rig we'll be building. We'll also manipulate them quite a lot in my other course, Facial Rigging for Beginners in 3ds Max 2018, so feel free to check that out as well. And finally, you have the Advanced Hand Rigging in 3ds Max that deals with this feature to help in creating advanced systems that we will add eventually to our hand project. Alright? In the next lesson, we will learn about groups.